How do you avoid wasting time, money, and resources on short-sighted decisions? What does it actually mean to think in systems, and how can it help us make better choices? I want to start with a quote Donella Meadows uses at the very beginning of the book Thinking in Systems. It is from Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and it perfectly sets the tone. If a factory is torn down, but then the rationality that produced it is left standing, then that rationality will produce another factory. If a revolution destroys a government, but then the systemic thoughts and patterns that produce that government are left intact, then those patterns will repeat themselves. There is so much talk about systems and so little understanding. And this is a perfect doorway into Donella Meadows' world. If you can't change the system, you will recreate the problem every single time. If you've ever seen a new process rolled out only for everybody to revert back a few months later, that's the system reasserting itself. It's not that people resist change, it's the structure doing exactly what it was designed to do. Imagine you're holding a slinky between your hands. Your bottom hand is supporting it and your top hand is holding it up. Now, pull your bottom hand away. What happens? The slinky drops, it bounces, and it settles into a particular rhythm. What do you think made it bounce? And you may think it was my hand. I just let go. But then, think if you could do exactly the same thing, but this time with a rigid box. Let's use the book, the Thinking in Systems book, as an example. Remove your hand quickly, slowly, or dramatically. Nothing interesting really happens. Why? Because the slinky and the book have completely two different structures. One has the capacity to bounce up and down, and the other one does not. And this is really important because you cannot coax a system into patterns, into behaviors that is a structure does not support. You can send managers to leadership programs, that is your hand, but if the company rewards people for hitting numbers, not developing people, if meetings are back to back, if managers feel overwhelmed or unsafe themselves, then no amount of training is going to change the behavior. And that's not because managers don't care, but it's because the structure does not support it. The structure wins, not the intervention. Now, the moment we start to see the relationship between a structure and behavior, we begin to see why systems actually produce the results they do. Why some problems persist no matter how much effort we put into solving them, and where real leverage for change actually lies. The world stops looking like a bunch of events, random events, and it starts looking like patterns that you can actually understand and even shift. So, what is a system? A system is a set of independent elements that are interconnected in a way that produces its own behavior over time. For example, onboarding is not just courses or checklists, it's a system of managers, tools, expectations, culture, so many different things, all interacting. If one part fails, the whole onboarding experience fails. Outside forces like your hand moving from underneath the slinky can influence a system, but the enduring behavior comes from within. It's the structure, the relationships, the flows within the system that dictate that. Remember, your hand triggered the motion, that bouncing motion, but the bouncing was a slinky's own structure. A system always consists of three things. Elements, that is the visible parts, people or components. Then there is the interconnections, that is the relationships, the information flows that link those elements. And then there is the purpose, the function of the system, the reason why the system exists. Change the people without changing the rules, nothing changes. Changing the elements without really changing the interconnections or the purpose won't really help. And that's exactly why so many awareness trainings almost never shift behavior. They touch the elements, not the interconnections. And Meadows says the heart of almost every system is made of stocks and flows. A stock is anything you can see, you can feel, count, measure at a given point in time. For example, customer satisfaction can be a stock, a level that rises or falls over time. The money in your bank accounts can be a stock. In L&D, capability can be a stock. Confidence is a stock. Operational readiness is a stock. And none of these shift overnight only because we roll out a marvelous workshop. Stocks are the state of the system just right now. They are static in the moment, but they are always dynamic over time. Flows are the action that fills or empties or drains in a stock. For example, customer satisfaction increases through helpful interactions, great service, or quick problem resolution. But it also decreases through slow responses, poor support, or broken promises. One of Meadows' most important reminders is that people consistently underestimate the momentum of a stock. You can adjust the drain in a bathtub really quickly, but the water level doesn't change quickly. It changes slowly because the stocks accumulate. They resist sudden movements. The same principle applies everywhere. You cannot fix a culture problem just in a quarter. A burnt-out team cannot recover in a couple of weeks. AI adoption doesn't skyrocket just because you bought that fancy new sexy tool. Even if senior leaders want instant transformation, stocks don't work that way. And no amount of leadership urgency overrides the rate at which people can learn, can adapt, and can build new habits. And this matters because these time lags from slowly changing stocks can create serious problems, system problems like delays and frustrations that we are all familiar with. But Meadows also highlights something important that we tend to forget, that these delays are also a source of stability. The same inertia that slows change also protects the system from sudden collapse. A classic example is adjusting the shower temperature. You turn it a little bit and nothing happens. You turn it more and bam, suddenly it's boiling. Why? Because the system responds slowly. And organizations are the same. People hear we value psychological safety, but nothing really happens for months. A new workflow is introduced, but adoption is painfully slow. L&D redesigns a marvelous onboarding program, but performance indicators lag. And that is normal. Delayed feedbacks makes systems feel unpredictable, but it also prevents collapse. If markets or employees' morale responded instantly to changes, then businesses would be in constant crisis. And this brings us to the engine behind all system behavior, and that is feedback loops. If a behavior persists over time, things like traffic jams, firefighting culture, skills erosion, there is always a feedback loop underneath it. Reinforcing loops amplify change. It's growth feeding more growth, or decline feeding more decline. Some examples of reinforcing feedback loops could be burnout. It leads to more stress, which leads to reduced capacity, and in turn, it leads to more stress and even more burnout. Or savings in your bank account. You will have higher interest, that means higher balance, and then even more interest. Skills growth is another example. It helps people have small wins, which makes them feel more confident, so they will try new approaches more confidently, and that leads to more growth. Reinforcing loops are really powerful because they never stop on their own. They build momentum for better or for worse. On the other hand, a balancing loop works in the opposite direction. It tries to keep things stable. Some examples that we actually experience every day is your home thermostat heating or cooling the temperature to maintain a comfortable temperature throughout the day. Or traffic lights preventing intersections from overloading. Or the approval processes that prevent errors. We don't always appreciate them, but they're important. But balancing loops often have delays. Remember when you were adjusting the water temperature in the bath, in the shower? You turn it a little, nothing happens. You turn it a little bit more, it's boiling hot. That is why organizations overreact. They cut too many roles too fast, or they push too many interventions, initiatives, all at once. Even when you understand stocks and flows and feedback loops, systems will manage to surprise us. Meadows lists several reasons why that happens, and once you notice them, you will start recognizing them everywhere. One of them is that we focus too much on events instead of patterns. For example, sales dipped this month, let's fix it quickly. Our engagement to score dropped, let's run some training. Events grab our attention, but they sit at the very top of deeper, slower moving patterns. And these are those stock dynamics and feedback loops that we just talked about. When we fixate on events, we keep firefighting symptoms instead of understanding the underlying structure. A dip in engagement is an event, and it is often created by different factors like workload, leadership, psychological safety, process friction that build over years. We also think linearly in a non-linear world. We expect straight lines, but systems produce curves, tipping points, and exponential changes. Take a simple lawn fertilizer example. Add 35 grams of fertilizer per square meter, and your lawn looks marvelous. Add 45 grams, and nothing really happens. Add 80 grams, and your lawn dies. Yeah, because too much of a good thing can easily and quickly become harmful. And this is why expecting proportional cause and effect can mislead us. We also ignore delays. Systems often react slowly. A decision made today may take weeks, months, or even years to show its real impact. Because of these delays, we often change direction at precisely the wrong moment. And then we create unintended consequences. Meadows ends the book by giving us some guidance that is both really practical and human. How can we live well inside systems that we cannot fully control, but we can certainly learn to work with? Here are some of the principles that she leaves us with. The first one is get the beat of the system. Before trying to change anything, watch. Observe patterns over time. Don't jump in with solutions or conclusions before even understanding what's really happening and why. The question is not only what's wrong, but also how did we get there? If we don't change direction today, where are we going to end up? And in L&D, it could be things like watching where a process slows down, or where errors cluster, or where teams repeatedly ask for help. Meadows also reminds us that we don't enter a system as a blank slate. We bring our own mental models with us, the beliefs about how the world works, and those beliefs quietly shape how we interpret systems. She suggests that we should notice those assumptions and really invite others to challenge them genuinely, and also ask them to bring their assumptions and then consider all of them as plausible until evidence rules them out. And then if they cannot be supported any longer by evidence, just let them go. The third advice is not to worship metrics, but understand them. Not everything that matters can be counted, and not everything that can be counted matters. I think we are all familiar with the pain of completion rates, right? Systems thinking means widening your field of perception. Culture, trust, psychological safety, meaning, purpose. All these soft variables drive the hard outcomes that leadership really cares about. And last but not least, stay humble and curious. The way we learn is by experiment, or as Buckminster Fuller put it, by trial and error, error, error. And the appropriate way when we are learning something new is to take small steps, monitor the change constantly, and be willing to change direction when we receive more information about whatever it is we're working on is leading. So, what changes you when you start thinking in systems? You shift from reacting to symptoms to redesigning the underlying structures, from blaming individuals to really understanding the drivers and blockers, from pushing harder to removing frictions, from short-term fixes to long-term shifts, and from linear assumptions to dynamic thinking. And once you see systems, you cannot unsee them. You stop asking, who messes this up? And start asking, what in the system makes this pattern, makes this behavior inevitable? And this is the real power of systems thinking. You stop fighting fires and start changing the conditions that produce them.